What up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Anime on Draft. We are in episode 172. I am Drew, joined by my fabulous Max co-hosts, Mark and Rolando. It's probably the last time we're going to be able to use that in a while.
No, we can use that. We still use it,
but it won't be like in like the perfect context, because one of the things we're talking about this week is the finale of Mawaru Penguindrum. We made it, boys. And there's going to be a lot to talk about in this episode, I feel like. What else are we doing this week? We got Shinsekai Yori, the finale of that. We're wrapping up our Orishiri for, it's been almost like half a year. 25-ish weeks of doing it. So, it's pretty crazy, but two good shows that we'll be wrapping up today. We also got a beer, the Modern Times Galaxy Sky Party Double IPA, brewed at Modern Times in Portland. Here's the can, and just in case you didn't see it, here's the can art in a glass. There you go.
And the beer in a glass.
And the beer in a glass, and it is a delicious one, so I'm excited to talk about this one as well. As I take a sip, delicious. We'll be talking about that beer. We got a little bit of a news break. Happy hour, we're going to be talking a little bit more about the fall 2020 premieres for week 2. And we have a little announcement for our Orishiri coming next week. So we'll talk about all those things. But without further ado, for one last time, Rolando, let's rock over Japan and get us hyped for this next segment. Man, I'm gonna miss it, boys.
I miss that. So good.
I say it every time. Glad we watched this. had to bring it up one more time.
The last time you could say it.
That's right. I missed the discussion last week, but it was actually this week's episode that I thought would be a little bit more controversial in terms of like kind of how it all ends. I thought they were kind of hinting at it in the week before, and I thought what I was thinking of was what they were going to talk about, but it ended up being this week, so I'm glad I didn't miss the entirety of the conversation. But man, where do we begin for this one? I have a whole slew of notes. I don't know how close we want to follow it, but I guess we can start with the boys in the box. Sanetoshi kind of brings up the idea of humans in general being unable to escape the curses of their lives and their fates due to being kind of trapped in that box, and that's kind of what we saw with Kamba and Sho. But then through the end of the show, we see that they kind of are able to escape that. So kind of interesting theme here about the idea of being like trapped in the box and then using some other thing. In this case, we find out the apple, and which we also find out is life, which we also find out is the Penguindrum, which we also find out is the fruit of fate, which Ringo says, let's share the fruit of fate, let's escape. She changes fate, and in turn, the two boys kind of sacrifice themselves to save the loves of their lives. Kind of a lot to digest there, right?
So much going on there.
This episode, it takes you even a long time to watch, right? Just because you kind of have to pause it and think about like all the different things that are kind of going on. But I guess just to take one of the main themes, the boys in the box, I don't know, any thoughts or comments on kind of, escaping the box, escaping your fate, escaping the curses, finding the Penguindrum, any of those things? I'm going to open it up to you guys.
It's so hard watching this like for the first time because I thought it was like a literal box. I was like, who put these children in boxes? Like, damn their parents, not only for killing hundreds of people, but also for putting their children in boxes. So for like the past like 3 episodes, I was like, why are these kids in boxes? Like, what's going on now? And it wasn't until like after the show finished, and I was like, I see.
Metaphorical boxes.
It's like I probably should have thought about that before. But like, I think it's a good representation of like where they were and pretty much just like how their entire lives felt. Like yeah, of course, they felt like they were trapped in the box. They were limited to how they could live their lives because every day they always had this, or I guess their entire lives they just always have this like guilt and shame for not only like being alive, but for being a part and being,
being Takakuras.
Being a product of the Takakuras, and they still have like these connections to the Kiku group. So it's like really unfortunate that they feel like not only trapped, but like that they're like slowly dying. So I think like, after thinking about it and realizing like, yeah, this is a figurative box there, Mark. I was like, oh, okay, like, it was nice to finally see Kamba pull out the apple. And I was like, oh, like they feel like they have hope at least. And when they, talking about the apple of life, or like the apple, what is the apple of fate, the fruit of fate. That's when things like started to come together, and this is like so late in like episode 25, and I'm like, oh, like it's starting to make sense now.
There's like a lot to think about, right? Because there's like metaphorical apples, and then there's also like Ringo, who is an apple, and it's trying to combine all these different ideas into like this one succinct thing of like what actually ends up happening to the boys. One of the things that you kind of started to touch on too, Mark, that I wanted to ask you guys about, Himari says just living was a punishment, and it's like this idea that they're cursed for even being alive, and we kind of learn how they escape it, right? And it's through the Penguindrum and through the love that they have for the two most important people in their life. So I think that's something that's that I always take away, or I took away from the first time. And even Yuri and Tabuki kind of bring it up. It's they share the fruit of fate. The loved children will find happiness, and even though Shoma and Kamba are kind of gone, there's still like hints of them around in the world, and there's still like, because of what they did, Himari and Ringo are kind of able to go on and live and thrive. So
yeah, I thought that was a nice touch too. It's kind of like not only circling back to Tabuki and Yuri, but it's kind of touching upon the fact that Kamba, Shoma, and Himari always felt like they had each other as family. And by like giving like Kamba and Shoma, just see a spider on the ground, gonna just.
You want to go kill that?
I think it's gone. Okay. Just if I'd scream or something later, just what happened. Sorry, as I was saying, I think it was nice that like the three kids, Kamba, Shoma, and Himari, are able to sort of come to realizations that they need to sort of sacrifice themselves in order to also help other people. And I think it's nice that by them being so willing to make that sacrifice, they're able to sort of help like other children, or at least like help kind of, I guess, ease up that pain that other people may be facing. You kind of don't realize what you have until it's like gone, or until you're losing it,
Yeah.
And then if we kind of circle back to, do you guys remember the story that was told about the goddess and the tree and the foolish girl that was tricked by the rabbits?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of is just like an allegory for this whole story. Like the rabbits are Sanetoshi split into two, and then like the sheep are the kids, and then the tree that is gone is sort of like their fate, because it's like the apple tree is like the tree in there, and by sharing the fruit of fate, there is also sort of like this duality that like we keep seeing pairs in a lot of this thing. So the boys, they don't believe in fate. They say at the very beginning of the series, but Ringo, like, she says, I believe in fate. And like, it's these girls, Himari and Ringo, that share the fruit of fate with these two boys that are saved, because they're the ones whose fate has been, I guess, taken out of the box for your sake, Mark, so that you can understand the imagery.
Thank you.
And so it's the two boys that no longer have a fate, that don't believe in it anymore, right? So like the whole like myth story thing is kind of just like sort of like an allegory for like the whole story. So it's like they lost their fate. They're sort of like the shriveled up tree. They're in their box, as you will, as if you will, and it's just like these pair things. So it's like it's just so I feel like I'm rambling, but like there's just too much imagery in this show.
This is so much.
For sure.
The whole apple thing is definitely like a if you think about like a Judeo-Christian mythology, you have like Adam and Eve, and a lot of attribution to apples in terms of like the fruit of knowledge that is shared by the two. And again, in that situation, the original sin of eating the fruit passes on to their children, and that's kind of what happens in this show too. Like the sin of the Kiga group, the Takukuras, is passed down to their children, and there's just so much shit that happens that you're just kind of like, what the fuck? And then that last episode happens, and you're like,
Damn.
okay.
That kind of leads me into the next question I wanted to ask you guys too. And so they talk about the idea of fate being cyclical, and you kind of see that when Momoko makes another appearance and she's talking to Sanetoshi. She's like, "This is kind of where I get off," but Sanetoshi's like, "It's coming around again. You know, it's gonna happen again."
It was bound to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I just have the idea, you know, we talk about trains being on a track, you know, fate being cyclical. And so my question to you guys is, did the sacrifice that the boys made really save Himari and Ringo? Maybe it saved them, but do we or their children get to escape fate, or are we just destined to go kind of around the track one more time?
I don't know. It's an excellent question. I'd like to think that they were. Well, I mean, the whole idea of the show is, you know, trying to make that switch onto a new track and reset the course. So I'd like to think that, you know, they were able to make that switch or somewhat change the course of this train, or maybe switch trains in its entirety. Because I think if they had they not like, you know, saved Himari or saved Ringo, I think it would have been just a repeat of you know, kind of people out for revenge and you know, grieving like what was lost and trying to get back what people had lost. I think it would have definitely been part of that cycle. But I'd like to think that things have changed now. I don't know. Maybe I'm just, you know, being very positive about it. I'm an optimist. I don't know.
It's hard to say though, right? Because you know, Sanetoshi's not gone. It's the idea, you know, he's this ghost, this curse that kind of haunts them. And he ends up back in like that library where Himari meets him for the first time. That's where kind of Momoka leaves him. And so it's like, is someone else destined to kind of beat him there and repeat kind of what happened? That's the way that I kind of think about it anyway. I don't know if you have any thoughts on it, Rolando.
I think that it's still a cycle, and that he's just part of a whole yin yang cycle. Like we talked about last week, the imagery of the rabbits. Like Alec looked up the imagery of rabbits and how they represent like the yin and yang, like when they're in two or something like that. And that's kind of like what we have here. So basically, this whole cycle, the yin and yang, the balance between like good and evil, is just going to continue. This is just what I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I don't know. I feel like maybe my optimism is coming from like, I want the family itself to have some sort of positive movement. But yeah, I think that like you make a good point, Drew, that Sanetoshi is still there. It's still possible for the cycle to start anew in some new way.
And I think we found too, like the only way to remove yourself or like to escape fate is to actually like remove yourself from it. And that's what Shoma and Kamba actually did. They were removed from the situation. So they're kind of, you know, they've escaped it, but where does that leave everybody else?
Right.
You know, we don't really know. Man. Some powerful conversations that this show will invoke.
That's deep.
I have some other notes here, but they're all kind of one-off things. We could talk about like the duality and the importance of, pairs and things, and I've been trying to hint at that like throughout the show. We see like the diary split in two, the apple split in two, the two groups, the boys, Himari, Ringo, Yuri, Tabuki, Maria, and God, what's her name? The Natsumi. I always forget her first name.
Mario.
Mario and
Masako.
Masako.
But you see the pairs kind of throughout the entire show, and so that's always something to kind of keep in mind, the importance of that duality. What else did I have here? The idea that Kamba had lost his light, and that Himari kind of gives it back to him, and kind of. He needed his brother, again, pairs, twos, needed his brother to kind of save him. That was the only way that they were going to kind of get off this track, kind of reset fate, all that kind of stuff. I don't know if there's anything else anybody wants to add before we kind of talk about the show as a whole, and maybe give your overall thoughts of the show.
I really like you mentioned the Himari being the one to sort of save Kamba. I think we had touched upon that a couple of weeks ago, and it was sort of like
the strong females, yeah.
Yeah, it was sort of like what has to happen and what needs to be done, and because she was already sort of accepting what I guess what she thought her fate was to she knew she had a limited amount of time, and her only answer was to try to save Kamba. And it's like that's sort of what we had expected and what we talked about. But it was nice seeing that it did happen, but it also sort of flipped itself as well. It's like kind of didn't quite expect it that way, but I'm very satisfied with the way they handled it. I think the imagery too in that whole scene was just beautiful.
I think one thing that I kind of remembered that I wanted to ask you guys too. We oftentimes see in these kind of fairy tales stories, and this one you can kind of see sort of fairy tale inspired in that you get kind of like the Sleeping Beauty idea with her in the bed and stuff like that. But it's the idea always that like love is the most powerful thing, and love kind of conquers all sort of deal. But we see several times throughout the last like 4 or 5 episodes, even Sanetoshi says, he's like, love isn't enough. Like you can love all you want, but you're still not going to kind of escape this fate. And so I think that's something that's really cool about this show, is a lot of times you see like love and it's going to work out because they love each other, and that's kind of the end of it. And it doesn't really happen in this show, which I think is super interesting, especially when you think about kind of like magical girls, or you think about princesses and things like that. That's always seems to be the case.
I think they're just being more realistic. I know it's kind of weird to say that about a very fantastical and fairy tale like series, but if you look at like Aesop's fables, and then the Brothers Grimm, their fairy tales, like you might be more familiar with the more watered down versions of what happens in those fairy tales, but in the actual fairy tales that were written by the Brothers Grimm, they actually have a sort of similar vibe where there's actually like a punishment or trade-off for the fairy tale endings.
They're often pretty brutal too.
Yeah. So that's kind of echoed throughout the show a little bit, albeit in a less disturbing and gruesome way.
Yeah.
Sure.
But like there is still that sort of yin and yang of like salvation and punishment,
It's more realistic. It's like how the actual world works.
A balance.
Which is not something that you often get in these types of shows for sure. So yeah. Any other thoughts on this episode before we kind of talk about overall how we feel about the show? All right, so Mark, this is the first time you are viewing, and we'll have to follow up with Alec because I want to ask him kind of the same question. But overall thoughts of the show itself, Just in general, like how was the pacing, how was the plot, character story, anything you can kind of think of. Just spill your mind. Here's your here's your blank canvas. Your time to to shine. Yeah.
I like this show. I really do. I think it has its moments where it's like really it's got like really great moments, and I think like just the symbolism in the show, of course, as we talked about in previous with Stars on My, like the symbolism, like the amount of thought that goes into the show, or Ikuhara shows itself. It's really impressive, and I think the show, it's also just cut above some of the other like random seasonal shows that we get that are just fun to watch, and like this goes above and beyond with bringing in like really heartfelt themes, and it has a lot of like sort of adult I guess circumstances that happen to children, which is like really unfortunate, but like it touches upon some pretty heavy stuff that you don't always expect people to go through. But it's like you mentioned, it's like real world sort of. It's touching upon some pretty real world events and the way that people may feel throughout their lives. And I think it does a pretty good job at that. And we talked about last week that the show I think had some hiccups pacing wise. The first like 6-7 episodes with Ringo is sort of unnecessary, but I guess you get to know the characters and you get to know some of their motivations early on, and I think that that may have been able to be shorter. I don't know. I think that the show does have it's got its drawbacks for sure. Some of the characterization seems to fluctuate a little bit as well, and it's still like a great show. I mean, I still really enjoy it. Just thinking back to like all the discussions that we've been able to have while watching the show, it's kind of impressive. Like it's kind of amazing that we have people who have watched it before, and people like myself who've watched it for the first time, and it's like we're still able to have these like really in-depth discussions, and you guys are able to view things that you may not have noticed before. And I think when a show is capable of doing that, I think it's sort of a paramount to how good a show how good a show is. I really enjoyed the show. I'm like really glad we did this. So
Yeah.
Loved it.
Rolanda, you've seen the show before, as have I, but what are your kind of thoughts? Your thoughts watching it maybe the second time and being able to have these discussions?
So it's kind of interesting seeing like Mark and Alex's reactions to the show as first time viewers, because I can see a little bit of what I experienced myself when I first watched it, because I really enjoyed the show when I first watched it, but weirdly enough, on the second time watching it, I noticed way more of the flaws than I did like the sort of magic from the first time. And I feel like it ruined it for me a little bit, because knowing that they could have, like, Ikuhara has done a better job with pacing and character development with Stars on My in was it 12 or 13 episodes, and just the sort of like what Mark was talking about, like the first like 9 episodes of this show were just Ringo's arc, and it felt like it should have been 3 or 4 episodes. There's just things that could have been fleshed out more in the latter half that there was no time. Like the whole switch in character development for Tabuki could have been like 3 or 4 episodes, but it was 1. And there's just time they could have reallocated, and I feel like could have been better, but it's more like a hindsight's 2020. The first time I watched it, I didn't really notice these things and like just enjoyed it, but I also did watch it week to week, so it was hard to kind of realize it at the time. Now, knowing what happens, and like even though we're still watching it week to week, I'm kind of like they really spent a long time on this, didn't they? So I guess my recommendation would be just, if you love the show the first time, maybe don't watch it a second time. Yeah. At least in terms for how I feel about it, because if you're gonna overanalyze it and like really see the flaws in it, it might detract from how you felt felt about it the first time watching, which it kind of did for me watching it the second time.
I could
It's still a
see
good
that.
show, but
Yeah, I could see that. I feel like I was so busy trying to dissect the show and understand what was happening that I was also kind of like forgetting about like, wow, like Tabuki's character just completely flipped. I was like, wait, what's happening now? Like, what's going on? Like week to week. So makes sense.
I feel like for me, it didn't, because there are obvious flaws with the show. I mean, you guys kind of listed them, and I agree with all of them. But I think even for me watching it the second time, just having the insight of knowing kind of what happens was really enjoyable. So I might disagree with you a little bit, Rolando. It's like if you want to watch the show again, I don't think, even though you're going to notice a lot of these glaring issues, I don't think it detracts from the show, at least from my perspective. Definitely agree that we don't need as much Ringo, especially in the start. Although it's so funny too, because the first time I watched it, it's like I hated her, and it was just like, God, she's so weird. Like, why do we need to go through? And then like towards the end of the show, you're like, wow, like what a great character. Like it's kind of funny how, and I think we even talked about it in the show, like this girl's so weird. She's like stalking her teacher. Like I really hate this character, and I'm thinking in the back of my head, it's like, just wait, guys, like she's actually like a really good character, like just hold on for it. And so it's like to kind of have some of those insights is nice, but definitely agree, like a lot of those parts probably could have been shorter. But I think as a whole, even with all the flaws, even with the pacing issues, even with characters that they emphasize in the start that don't really end up mattering in the end, I still think it's a really good show, and it's even a good show to kind of rewatch. And I say this too, but it's also been probably like 6 years or so since I've seen it, maybe less. I can't remember the last time I watched it. And so I didn't remember each and every single nuance, but just like kind of knowing 100% of what, or at least knowing how it ended. It was kind of good to kind of go through and see and like watch the characters develop another time. So, yeah. I guess we should rate it, right? This one for me, I can start, is like a 9.5. I think it's a very good show. It's not perfect by any means because of all the things that we've kind of listed, but it's definitely up there, and it's a show that I would not recommend to like a beginner anime fan, because it is very strange. There is kind of a lot that goes on, and like just having them get over the fact that there's like magical girl transformations, especially like heavy at the start of the show. That's like kind of a big leap. Same thing for Sarah Zanmai. It's like you wouldn't recommend that to somebody like, you know, is fresh and new to anime. And I think that's kind of the vibe that Ikuhara gives in a lot of his shows, at least more recently. But yeah, this is not quite a masterpiece, but very good. So 9.5 for me. Rolando, if you had to rate this show, what would you give it?
Unfortunately, how I feel about the second watch through is that it has docked the score for
That's fair.
for the show for me, and I kind of am at a 7.5. So I feel like the first time I watched it, I would have given it an 8.5.
Mhm.
But after seeing it again and seeing all the flaws, and also seeing it after watching Sarazanmai, has kind of made me realize just how much Ikuhara has even evolved as a director, because he's able to do the same thing that he does in this show in way less time, at least in Sarazanmai. So my recommendation is, if you're a first-time watcher and you haven't seen Sarazanmai and Penguindrum, watch this first, and then watch Sarazanmai. They have similar themes and just a sort of similar story, because I know we kept talking about it while we were watching Sarazanmai, just because the styles are similar, the director is the same. But just watch, like, you can, if you do it in this order, you can see how much Ikuhara had evolved from 2009, 2010, something like that, all the way up to 2018. So, or is it 2019? I don't remember. Was it last year, Sarazanmai?
Last year, I think.
Yeah. So
I think it was 2019. Yeah.
It's just like seeing the 10-year difference, and like I guess how much experience gives you.
Well, I mean, you could even see that, and he grows like very well with each show he does, right? You start with like his first big one, Sailor Moon, and you see that compared to Utena, that compared to Penguindrum, and Penguindrum compared to Sarazanmai. I mean, there's a couple they're kind of strewed in there as well, but like you said, the evolution in his directing, not only style but like being able to tell a story, has greatly evolved, and I'm interested. We have some news later talking about a new project of his, so we will talk about that. But sorry, don't cut you off, Mark. First time viewer. What are you gonna rate this one?
Yeah, I think just to kind of touch back on like the Ikuhara's progression, I think it's also sort of reflective on like how anime itself has changed over the decades since he's been directing. I mean, it's like a lot of shows nowadays. It's like you got to pack in as much as you can into 12 episodes because you don't know if you're going to get a 2 core unless you're like a serialized manga or something, It's like, and even then, it's like you want to grab your audience as soon as you can, and not like older shows where you can have 6-7 episodes of Ringo trying to seduce her teacher,
I think you make a good point there, though.
Yeah.
Because the landscape did change from like being regular longer seasons, like 25 episodes, to shorter 12 episode seasons.
Yeah, it seemed like that was like the norm back then, like 10 years ago. It's like watching.
Well, there definitely wasn't like the plethora, like this season alone, there's like, 15, 16, 20 shows of them, like 7 or 8 are probably decent enough to watch. Back then it's like, what, you got 2 or 3, 4, and they got full 24 episodes, and you watch them, and that was what you got, and you hope they were good.
Back then you had to be a little bit safer in your bets, so it's like if you could bet on like Ikuhara, like a known established name, then you could be like, we're gonna do this show for 26 episodes, that sort of thing. Maybe even 52 episodes, which was also not uncommon back in the 2000s and like before then. Then as you started to become more, I guess, curious into like what like these animation studios could do, it was just like, if we're gonna put a risk, then we should put less money into it.
Yeah, you gotta make sure it's gonna be worth it. No, yeah, definitely get that.
But as you were saying, as we interrupted. But.
No, that's all right. I enjoyed the show. I think just starting out my rating of the show, I would give it an 8.5. I thought it was really good. Definitely has its flaws, but I think those probably, like Rolando, you mentioned, like they probably stem from already watching Sarazanmai. Like that was my first Ikuhara show that I'd watched. So I kind of like notice how the storytelling has been, and how it was with Sarazanmai, and then going back to Penguindrum, and it's like things are a little bit more drawn out, and then things get sort of jumbled around at times. But I mean, the story in the show itself was still really great. It was really great to watch. It was really fun to discuss it, like I mentioned. And I really like the show. It's like I kind of want to go back, because I mentioned, I told you guys I've never seen Utena before, so it's like I want to. I feel like I'm going back in time now. Like,
should we watch it?
Maybe
we're gonna finish Clannad soon. Although we still have that Gundam rewatch we haven't done. So if you guys are not familiar, we've been doing other rewatches in our Discord if you want to join. But
yeah, I say we do the Utena, maybe the Gundam thing, because I already started my Gundam, so maybe we can do that while I finish my Gundam. And then I'm totally down to watch Utena with everybody on the Discord, because it'd be a lot of fun.
It'd be a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, 8.5 for me. I enjoyed the show. I thought it was really good. I definitely, like you guys said, I would recommend watching this show, just as a whole, and then watching Sarazanmai. I think they're very good shows, and you kind of need to be aware that they're kind of weird, and like you gotta just accept like whatever happens, and then just try to get through it and enjoy the ride. Really, sort of the only like recommendation you could say with like a show like this, or with an Ikuhara show. It's like you just gotta accept what's happening, and then just enjoy it, and just.
You're on for that crazy subway train ride. And
Just strap yourself
on
in.
the wrong stop. Oh shit!
Just strap yourself in. That's all I gotta say.
At least you know with an Ikuhara show that the OPs and the EDs are going to be great.
Oh, so good. Yeah. The music in
in
I
general,
think it's
yeah.
another thing. The music in the shows is so good. I mean, it's like week to week, and you get like a new ED like every other week, and they're all really, really fucking good. Man, yeah, it's impressive. It's like I think probably about 4 weeks in a row, I was like looking up to see if I could find the ED, and it's like a cover song of this 90s band. I'm like, dang it, like it's nowhere to be found.
Well, it's funny because it's like it is harkening back to that time that he is
Right.
covering.
Yeah. It's just like really appropriate. So it's a lot of effort that went into the show. It's definitely noticeable.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So that kind of wraps up Penguindrum. Maybe we'll get some Alex thoughts if he's able to join us next week. You maybe get his rating, but high praise for the most part. Rolando, I don't blame you for docking it a little bit. I understand. I'm not hurt about it.
It's just Sarazanmai kind of ruined it for me, honestly.
Yeah.
It's hard to because Sarazanmai is so good, like so good. So
unexpectedly good.
Yeah, so definitely high praise, high recommendation for that show. If anyone was watching along with us and wants another similar show, definitely go check that out. I think what I'm going to do is, because I'm getting towards the end of my beer, we're going to audible Shinsekai Iori. We'll bump that down in the order a little bit. So let's start talking about this beer a little bit if that works for you guys. So as mentioned earlier, we have the Modern Times Galaxy Sky Party Double Hazy IPA, courtesy of Modern Times Portland. We picked these up as part of the limited special releases that they're doing on a bi-monthly kind of release, and it was available in the Southern California area for us. So yeah, this is kind of as you can see, your stereotypical, very, very juicy, hazy sort of IPA, kind of packed with everything that you would expect from it. But this one, for me, definitely isn't as good as the Hedge Witch, but it is very good.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think that Mosaic Hedge Witch was one of my favorite beers, probably, if not my favorite beer from this year.
Mm-hmm.
And like honestly, like as shitty as 2020 has been in general, there actually have been really good beers that have come out
Really
this
good
year.
beers. Yeah, people are kind of hunkering down and just brewing, and trying to keep the brewery afloat here, as can't really have the tasting rooms open and stuff. The main difference in this beer is what you said. It's the difference between Citra and Galaxy hops, and that's what it tastes like. Because I think they're brewed, at least flavor profile is like very similar, but the hop profile is kind of drastically different. This is more piney, less citrusy notes, but super kind of florally, wet ground in the forest after it rained sort of pine that you get, like super, super heavy, bitter on the sides of your mouth, and then kind of finishes very smoothly, at least
Like,
for me.
As you say it, just like
Set it up.
just look at the can.
Crazy.
I've lived in Portland,
It has that foresty feel, right?
And that's kind of what you get, and this kind of embodies Portland for me, because I live there, and this beer, like, I don't know, maybe it's just like the can art making me nostalgic, but like all the things on the can art or on the glass as I have it here are actual things in Portland.
Live nude donuts there?
Like Sasquatch.
Like Sasquatch, like the big Paul Bunyan Man, the arcade breweries, the food trucks, Voodoo Donuts, the Voodoo Donuts thing. So like it has like the live nude thing. There's like a hentai porn theater right next to Voodoo Donuts. I'm not even kidding. Like that is like right next to it. So it's like everything in this can is like true to form, and it like makes me super nostalgic for Portland. But yeah, even I don't know, maybe it's that nostalgia that's like driving the flavor profile for me, but it's like you go to the Pacific Northwest, it is rainy, it is wet, there is pine, and that's what this beer tastes like.
That's great. Yeah, this can art is amazing. It's like I can't stop looking at it. So what's going on? It's amazing. Sasquatch wearing a unicorn floaty. Amazing. It's amazing.
Portland Weird is the mascot. Austin thinks it came up with it first, but they didn't. It is a Portland thing, and it kind of is embodied within this can art and this beer. So
Is it a Viking ship?
there's a Viking ship. You could look at this thing for an hour and probably find new things about it, but it is all true to form for Portland.
Like a Chinese gate too.
Yeah, there's a big Chinatown in downtown. You can get like bomb ass dim sum down there. So yeah, now it's like turning into a Portland episode. Like, I want to go back to Portland.
When are we going to Portland,
awesome.
guys?
What are we going?
Portland is sick. Portland is sick. There's
like
good
it.
breweries. Rogue is there. Widmer is there. Henry Weinhardt, which we haven't been able to get on the show, but it was like one of my first introductions to craft beer. There's a lot of craziness. Yeah,
Right now.
let's go.
Yeah. Well, once this pandemic
food,
ends,
too.
we should go to Portland.
Yeah,
we can take a road trip, go past the rushing river on the way there, and then get into Portland. So coming up with good ideas here, guys.
Yeah. I'm down for that. So
You're saying things I like.
Yeah, and in simpler times, maybe in a year or so we can do it. I'm more than down. I don't know thoughts on this beer. I've been rambling a lot about it.
it's funny that you mentioned like the whole like piney thing about it, because like that is what this beer is. It is sort of. It feels like a sort of quintessential West Coast IPA taste in terms of the pininess, but it is still very hazy and juicy. There's a lot of like that tropical fruit flavor. It's more of like the savory sweetness rather than like the citrusy. What am I thinking? Like astringent, citrus acidic flavor. It's more of that like fruit, like mangoes, passion fruit, sort of fruitiness, and it kind of I feel would do better in this case because it's juicy, hazy, than citrus, because citrus, while it would harken well to this, I feel like would be more of a sharper flavor that I guess is more similar to the pine, whereas the more full-bodied like mango, passion fruit, that sort of tropical flavor kind of helps give this not only its body and that mouthfeel, that texture that you get, but it helps kind of give you that, I don't know. Drew, can you help me out here on what, Mark? I don't know.
It's like it's not as like, I don't know, for some reason. So this like double IPA is not as like thick is gonna be the word I'm gonna use.
Yeah.
It's not as like thick or hearty as other like full. It's not like that for a lot of other double IPAs, at least like the juicy IPAs that I've had. This one's just got a lot of not only hop flavor but fruit flavor, and I think to me it seems like a lot because it's like very earthy and very kind of tart a little bit. And it's like you mentioned, Drew. It's kind of gives me that like side of the tongue, side of the cheek. Like it almost kind of squeezes, like makes me pucker up a little bit. And to me, that is a little bit strange. But it also makes me want to drink more. It's like I kind of sort of like cringe at it a little bit, but it's sort of
intriguing.
Yes, yeah. I'm like, but I sort of like it. I don't know. I don't want to say
it's like
really weird.
You want to wash the taste of it out of your mouth with more of it.
Yes, it's exactly it. It's very odd in that sense. Like it's very good. It's very good. But I think you're on something that it's sort of got this sort of like classic West Coast IPA style that just has like a ton of fruit in it.
The biggest problem I have with this beer, because this is the fourth one that I've had now, and it comes back every time I drink it, is that it has kind of this medicinal alcohol-y flavor that it finishes with, and that is my biggest issue with it, because it is like super, like you can almost like taste it going back through your nose, like when you drink like a strong alcoholic vodka, or like, you know, or an alcoholic drink with vodka in it. You get kind of that like medicinal alcohol-y taste, and this finishes with that, and that is my biggest deal with it, because it leaves you sort of like with that bitter on the side of your mouth. You kind of have the weird feeling through your nose, and it's like super like minerally tinny, almost tasting of like the can. And these are like super nitpicky things, because it's not like super strong with these flavors, but those are just all the things that I experience, especially when it finishes for me.
I don't know if I get the exact medicinal flavor, but I definitely get a lot of the West Coast pine, like really hoppy flavors. I don't know if it's just because I've had this sitting in my fridge for a while, and I remember it tasting a little bit more fresh before, so I feel like it's being less fresh isn't as good in my opinion.
Sure.
But I don't know. There's something about this beer that I think is very good, but it also has that weird thing about it that I don't know about. I don't know if I like it or not, but
Yeah. I think I'm right there with you too. It's like that super piney sort of bitterness that it doesn't. Like, I know it's a double IPA, right? But it just seems like it doesn't fit. It seems sort of out of place, and I'm not sure I'm down with that.
I wish it were like danker. Like,
Yeah, I think
like
that's
had
the
a
thing.
more dank flavor. Like, anytime I think of like a really dank beer, I think of the Waldos from Lagunitas. And it's like, I wish that some of these beers had that like level of dankness, but also in like hazy IPA form, because that would just be like super over the top for me. And this is like kind of getting there, but it like lacks that.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
You want to do ratings,
Yeah.
Rolando?
Yeah.
I think this is a good beer. I feel like I had a very good impression of it when I had it fresh. And because I remember telling Mark, I'm like, hey, like, try this beer. It's good. And then afterwards, I had the Mosaic Hedgewich, and I was like, no, I actually have that beer. But this beer, yeah, it just has that, like, weird, I don't know about it, taste on it, but I don't know if it's just because it's older and now it's fresh. But I still think it's a good beer. It's a very drinkable double IPA if you
For sure.
are a fan of just regular West Coast IPAs, because it has a similar piney profile to it. It's not as hop forward as those, but it definitely also doesn't have the same like fruit profile as well.
Yeah.
But I think
This would not be one that Alec likes.
Oh no! I don't think Alec
definitely
likes
not.
this beer at all.
Yeah.
Nah.
He would like the Mosaic Hedgewich. I don't know if he would like this beer at all.
Correct. Yeah, for sure.
And I forgot what the beer was that we had before the Mosaic Hedgewich. That I was kind of like, you know, if this beer was a little bit more this way, I would rate it way
Oh
higher.
yeah, what were we talking about? I know exactly that
Yeah.
conversation, but I can't remember the beer.
I feel like this is around that point. So I think I gave that like a 4 or 5. I'll give this like a 4 or 5.
You give this 4 or 5?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mark?
Yeah, I'd probably give this like a 4. I think it's I know, and I keep saying that like it's drinkable and it's it's still very good. I still think that after drinking the Mosaic Hedgewich, it's like that's what I want out of a double IPA. That's claiming itself to be hazy. Yeah, it's like I don't know. Maybe this is also just sort of like hazy snobbery, where it's like I want like juice, like straight up juice. You know, like I want it to be
Wants
like
to burn in his
yeah. I want to see the pulp in it too. I also think it's I think it's sort of just that mouthfeel is sort of distracting it for me. It's weird, yeah. Like I keep wanting to drink more. Maybe it's because like I want to wash it down. But it's like an enjoyable experience at first, but just like that lingering taste is a little bit weird to me. But I mean, yeah, it's still a very good beer. So I don't know. Yeah, I want to go down to get up to Portland.
You gotta go down to Portland.
I go down to Portland and
Canadian.
make my way back up. Yeah, eh? Yeah.
Portland's sick.
Yeah.
Oh, 4?
4. Yeah, 4. Yeah, but
I'm gonna give mine a 4.25. For all the reasons you guys already said it. I mean, this beer is like kind of like, although I had never had this beer in Portland, obviously.
Yeah, the brewery opened in 2018, right? The Portland one.
It just like really reminds me a ton of Portland, and brings back fond memories of college and all that good stuff. And it's a good beer. It's a good one if you are interested in getting into the DIPA hazy craze, but you are not super big into like super bitter DIPAs. This one's like kind of on the edge of like just maybe getting to be very bitter, but also being like still very drinkable. And it's like 8%, so you can't go wrong with that. Have one a night and you're probably good. Yeah. But yeah, this is a great beer. 4.25 for me. Unfortunately, unless you live in Portland or can get a limited release, you probably won't be able to get it. That's the unfortunate thing about us doing these limited releases. But at the same time, if you can get it, do yourself a favor. The cool thing too is I think all of us got in on the San Diego DIPA release for. So we're gonna be picking those up this week, and that will probably make it onto an episode very soon. So I'm super looking forward to that as well. Need to get the Anaheim one as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I ended up buying the barley wine.
Yeah, I told you I bought the barley wine, and you're like, oh fuck it, okay.
I was like, I should have. I'm gonna do it. Like I don't know why I didn't. I was like, it's like with like $30. I was like, nah, I'm not gonna do it first. And I was like,
I saw it first, and I was like, add to cart, and then I looked at it again, and I was like, do I buy a second bottle limit too? And then I was like, I only have 8 minutes to decide on what I'm going to buy for the sale.
The thing that I've noticed, though, at least for mine, if you show up, they will let you buy more, usually.
Really?
Yeah, because they only allow like 3 people per slot, I think, for picking up the beers.
Because I've bought other beers as I've been there. I don't know what their policy on the limited releases are, but you can probably finagle your way into
unless it's sold out.
If you really want it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I looked again, and
I'm gonna when I go to pick mine up on Friday, I'm going to see if they have any more Mosaic Hedwig, because if they do, I'm for sure buying that.
You know what? I might ask.
You should ask.
Yeah,
but it's hard though, because I feel like the LA location gets a lot of traffic. The Dankness Dojo, as they call it.
Yeah.
It's just so hard to park over there. You have to like park in the little like parking garage, and then
it's god awful.
Yeah. But anyways, Drew, what was your score again?
4.25.
Nice bird.
It's a nice bird. All right. Well, I'm almost done. I think you boys are probably getting down there too. But we've got another Orishiri show to talk about. Let's talk about the finale, episodes 24 and 25 of Shinsekai Yori. I think this one ended up working out pretty well, whereas Penguindrum was less like plot heavy and stuff to talk about in the beginning. They've kind of like flipped, where Penguindrum's like, whoa, shit ton of philosophy. You can earn yourself a degree by talking about all the stuff that's going on in there. Whereas Shinsekai Ori it's more just like, how does the story end? We kind of know everything that we need to know, and let's like close it out. So episode 23 just have some like quick notes, but not like super substantial that I think we need to talk a ton about. But we find out potentially the fiend, she doesn't know that she's human. They do the mirror trick, and she doesn't blow herself up. She doesn't get confused. So that kind of fizzles out. We almost got the use of the Psycho Buster. Saki kind of blew it, right?
She's like, literally blew it.
Literally blew it.
He's too close. I can't be the last member of Group 1. And then literally lights it on fire, which was fine.
Can't take a girl's husbando, dude.
That's true. We do learn later that they are to be husbando and waifu. But the thing that I took out of this episode is like, and we learn the answers, at least to the second question that I'll ask in episode 25. But the first thing is like the colonies have been trying for years to discover like how to destroy mankind because of the idea that, you know, they can never be seen as equals. And, you know, Kiramaru says the same thing. He's like, why did you go to Tokyo? It's like, well, we're looking for ways to fucking kill you guys because we had really no other choice if it comes down to it. And I think even Squealer in the second episode kind of says, you know, we could never be your equals. We were always seen as slaves. What else could we have done? And, you know, Saki's trying to say, he's like, well, you know, only the harshest punishment was like wiping out your entire species. But for like her to even say that, it's like, you're wiping out like their entire species. You're not on equal footing. Like, even
no, you're just proving him right.
as much as you want to think you are, like you're just like kind of proving his point. And so yeah, just the idea that, you know, the colonies are kind of always been pitted against the humans, and it makes sense. You know, I think. And then the second question is like, well, if she's not a fiend, what is she? And that's what we figure out in the episode 25. But before we jump into that. Any thoughts about episode 24? Just kind of set up for the finale. Not too much going on. I think the idea that Kiramaru, we don't know if he's friend or foe at this point.
I feel like it was it is just a setup episode because it was too obvious that the short ass like monster rat size thing in the cloak was not the child. Yeah. Like the child is taller than the monster rats. So I was like, oh, we got tricked by the hair. And then you look from a distance and you're like, wait, it's the same height. Like, that's not it. You guys are just getting fooled for no reason. Yeah. And then that fuels their whole distrust of Kiramaru that we can talk about in the next episode. But
yeah. It seems pretty obvious to me, but you know, setup episode for, you know, what I think is like a pretty good finale. So let's talk about episode 25. So they figured it out, right? It took a lot of poking and prodding. You know, Shun made an appearance to kind of push them in the right direction, but I was kind of thinking this. I don't know if you guys talked about it last week, but the idea that she was raised by queer rats, so like her death feedback would be with them, not the humans. They keep like yelling at us as like, it's not a fiend, it's not a fiend, it's not a fiend, and it's like you start thinking about it, it's like, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How can they control it if it was a fiend?
Yeah,
right. It would go berserk and would kill everything.
Yeah.
And you know, that's kind of not what we had. You know, she thinks she's a queer rat. You know, she behaved like one, acted like one, speaks like one.
Yeah.
Of course, if she, you know, murders one of her own, she's gonna get that kind of inhibition. So it kind of makes sense. I think a lot of times during this show too, we like try to overanalyze things. Just because it's like trying to be too cute with a lot of these things when it's just like the answer is right in front of you. And that's even
episode 23. Inui says, "Luckily, when I was escaping, he essentially used the queer rat's language, the monster rat's language, and pretended like he was injured, and she didn't attack him. Mm-hmm. So like that's like the big hint right there that she believes that she's a monster rat."
Yep. Makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Sometimes it helps not to overanalyze things, boys. Maybe we can take that as a criticism on our own part for some of these things. But I mean, it makes sense at the end.
I mean, like based upon like how crazy and how unexpected the first half of the season was, or first half of the show was, I think we were just overanalyzing everything because we had no idea like what was going on, like with the kids disappearing and with their powers and all the limits and stuff. I think it's like it made sense to us of course, because it's like, oh, we don't know what these fucking crazy monster rats are thinking, but then now that like everything's understood, it's like, all right, yeah, they're not like crazy evil scientists, geniuses like we're making them out
I
to
wish
be.
that would have been so much cooler.
Me too, man. I wish there was like a bunch of little monster rat babies with cantuses running around, man. That'd be crazy.
But as we learned in this episode, they can't.
They can't do that now.
So I think what we take away out of episode 25, Kiramaru was the key. Shun kind of pushes them in the right direction, but they send him out there bandaged up, kind of looks like a person, but he benefits extremely from his height in that kind of situation, and she blows him up, and it ends up being kind of her demise,
What
and like the demise of Squealer and all that kind of stuff.
Dude,
Kiramaru.
Huge boss,
Alright,
dude.
She asked him, she's like, can you do this for me? And he's like, yes. Because in his eyes...
Huge bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In his eyes, his colony's salvation is humanity surviving.
Yeah.
Well, and the fact that his one request is the queen survives. He's stuck in the old ways, which is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Hard to say. But he's like, as long as the queen survives, that's what's important to us, or important to me and to my colony and all that kind of stuff. So she's there. I'm more than willing to kind of give up my life so that you guys can kind of end this threat. Because I think too he sees the threat, right? If
Exactly.
Squealer ends up winning, they're going to be all out war between him and that colony. Although they can't use obviously the child to fight.
Yeah.
It's just going to be constant war after that. So he's like, this is the best for my family, my colony sort of deal.
We've also seen how Yakomaru works, and it's once they take over a colony, they lobotomize the queen and make her just a farm factory,
Breeding machine,
and
exactly.
and then are just like, well, we're gonna enslave everyone else. So like for him, it's like if they lose to them, his colony's fucked.
Yeah.
So it's like at least their colony has been the most loyal to the humans, and so
They can continue to
he
live.
can continue to live with their sort of freedom. Although their colony has had it way less worse than the other colonies.
Yeah.
For sure. The other thing that I want to talk about, so they she ends up dying. They capture Squealer, and they're having that kind of conversation in the jail cell where Saki and Satoru are kind of asking like, why did you do it, sort of deal. I kind of get his point of view, right? All the queer rats wanted at the end of the day was complete autonomy. And we learned that maybe they actually did deserve it. I'll talk about that in a second. But they could never have it, right? They're slaves. They don't have the powers. He even says at one point, like, the only reason why you rule above us is because you have that damn Canthus. And we could never compete with that. And so you kind of see where he's coming from, right? He could have been content to just like kind of live out their days subservient to the humans, but
Yeah. It's always going to be
there's always a point in
matter of
contention.
power and status.
Because I think he says too, and we already talked about it, but he's like, one wrong step, you would have just eliminated us. Like, how is you can't live in fear like that all the time. So, you can see where he's coming from. Obviously, was close to coming out on top, made one fatal error, and
Hubris.
exactly, underestimating Kiramaru and his loyalties, and that was kind of their downfall.
Ironically, hubris is a very poignant word for this.
Oh, absolutely. It keeps getting brought up in
Come back
our
on.
conversation because, we talked about the hubris of the humans and their festival and, how they were able to kind of, sneak in and do a ton of damage. And now it's flipped the other way. It's
And also, just like where hubris comes from with Greek, and how it's sort of like this, you're like the human blindness towards what they feel they are in comparison to the gods.
Yep.
And that's the whole point with like Square saying, "I'm human. We're humans," and the humans they see themselves like, "No, you're not. We're gods. You're subhumans," and it's just so poignant.
well, and that leads us to the next point, right? Like, they are actually kind of humans.
Yeah.
So like the final conversation between Satoru and Saki is, she's kind of doing some investigation into like the genus and species of naked mole rats and kind of the naming of those kinds of things. And Satoru kind of reveals like, well, I did some digging and here's what I found. Naked mole rats have like 30 chromosomes, I think he said. Humans have 23, and the queer rats have 23. The only other organism on Earth with 23 chromosomes is an olive tree, and I don't think these things got bred out of trees. And so it's crazy, right? So the old founders of the society, they bred humans who did not have powers with chromosomes of naked mole rats, until to the point where killing them did not trigger the
death.
Shame. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's pretty crazy. Yeah. And so it's pretty crazy that, that's how society evolved, right? It's like you just keep injecting, and so it does kind of come back to that mad scientist sort of view. Is like they kind of splice the Cantus users to kind of control them with like the death feedback, but they also didn't want non-humans to like fight against them, so they just like fuck their genes up with some naked mole rats. Really, really crazy, but also like kind of interesting.
It's slightly disturbing. I mean, it's like I get sort of they didn't want to completely eradicate the non-Cantus user like species or human side of the of the human species, I guess. But I mean, to take it. But
is that
level,
the way to go about
it? That's totally not the way to go about it. I mean, it's crazy.
Just think about how they even. So like we find out that they are modified humans, right? But just look at how they dehumanized him.
Yeah.
He's naked in his ugly ass form.
Yep.
And if you think about humans and kind of what distinguishes humans from beasts is sometimes you'll hear it's the fact that humans wear clothes, right? They take that away from him. They're both intelligent creatures. He has the ability to speak their language, and think like a general. And because he doesn't have this power, they dehumanize him. They put him as this ugly creature, take away his clothing. He used to have this like whole garb that looked like a magistrate, honestly.
Like a high priest or something, yeah.
And they take that away from him. And then he says, they're like, what do you think you are? He's like, I'm human. And they just laugh at him. It's just so just dehumanizing and so brutal what they do. It is just so messed up.
Yeah. Messed up.
Well, and then not to mention the punishment.
The punishment that like forever... He's like forever in pain.
Like all the pain receptors in your body constantly being triggered, but then also regenerating at the same time. And
he can't die because they're keeping him alive.
Man, that was rough. And then Saki is like goes and sees him, and I was like, no way, man. That was intense.
I think Saki kind of grows out of the experience though too, because like she does end up kind of putting him out of his misery, and she even mentions like some rules are meant to be kind of like not followed or broken, so you can kind of see like her development through. Overall, I think Saki is like a really good main character because of the main thing that she was kind of recruited for, her like level-headedness and ability to make decisions, and I think that's what kind of made her, at least in my mind, like a really good character. Because she didn't make any of these stupid rash decisions that a lot of the other characters were making, and I feel better at least about that society with her kind of at the head of it.
Yeah. She does have that strength that they talk about. She like despite the situation, she's able to at least think, and she did have help. Unfortunately, it was the sort of thing where Shun and his omnipotence had to go and help her with her predicament. But I always thought it was weird. I was like, it doesn't make sense that the monster rats can control this ogre or whatever. It's just it doesn't make any sense. Like these things are supposed to have no reasoning, and so it was just kind of a little bit of an not an asshole, but it is a little bit of like sort of bullshit that Shun has to be the one that kind of leads her to this.
Yeah, a little bit. It was like, all of a sudden, wait, that she's
she's had the information and the knowledge with her this whole time, but I guess we could look at it in the sense that that's just her mind working that way, and actually
that's how she rationalized it.
Yeah, but someone's call disappeared.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh.
Is it Mark?
I'm
gonna guess so. Hey, Mark. Welcome back.
Can you hear us?
There we go.
There you go.
That's weird.
You didn't miss much.
Yeah.
No.
But yeah, I enjoyed this show a lot.
Yeah, I bet you're happy to have finally finished it. in that vein, Rolando, final thoughts and maybe how would you rate it?
I really enjoyed the show. There are parts that I was kind of wondering what they're trying to do. There were some issues I had, but I think overall, at least experiencing the last few episodes for the first time, I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I enjoyed what they did, sort of how we were questioning things at every turn. Literally every episode, we're like, is it this?
Yeah.
Is it that? And then things that we had discussed in previous weeks ended up coming back and being true. And that's what I think was really good about this show. And then, like, Drew, like, you had mentioned weeks before that I bet you that these monster rats derived from those other non-power holding humans. And you were right. So,
yeah. Big brain time.
It's just funny that
Galaxy brain.
That it really is like a prime example of keep it simple, stupid, right? Just the simplest answer is the answer.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I would give this like an 8.5 out of 10.
Mark, final thoughts and rating?
Yeah, I did like the show too. It's another one of those where I'm glad we were able to have such in-depth discussions every week, because I probably said this, every other week, but I was always just thinking, like, what the F is going on? Like, what is happening? I just don't know. I have so many more questions that aren't being answered, and then I get, one of those questions answered, and then I have 5 more questions.
Yep.
But it's fun. Like, it's fun when you're able to get a show like that. And like Rolando said, it's fun when you kind of are like guessing what's going to happen, or guessing like where things are going to go, and then you end up being right, or you kind of like know. But at least in this, it's like satisfying because it's not like an immediate gratification. It's like this has been episodes in the making that since Drew made that comment about like maybe it's hunter gatherer, like maybe it's like this old form of civilization, and it's like you don't get that a whole lot either. Like it's hard to make these sort of broad claims about where the story is going to go, and then it ends up paying off like further down the line. It's very satisfying, but it's also very satisfying that it wasn't that easy. It's like we had to really guess and pull at straws to come up with some of these ideas. But yeah, the show itself was crazy. It was a fun ride. I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff that could be worked on, like pacing wise and animation wise. But
they're just having an acid trip. It's okay.
It's really what it was like. It was like having like an acid trip on screen. It's like, what's going on? Like, I can't tell what the hell's happening. But I don't know. Like, I still feel like there's some questions that weren't answered. Like, what's with the spirit that came out of that dude?
Just don't worry about it.
I was just gonna forget about that.
The show had a lot of they had a lot of what was it, Chekhov's gun or whatever. That they actually did cover, like with Drew talking, like his hypothesis being correct, and like the whole like previous time where there were like the assassins that came and killed the magistrate. They killed him, but he killed them as well, and like that plays into the whole like war between the societies and
like the false Mineshiro. It's like if the kids can just access it, like what's to stop anybody else from accessing this knowledge, and then it ends up coming back. So it's like they did a good job at answering a lot of these questions further down the line. But yeah, it's like I still have some questions about the world. But I mean, like, at least I'm satisfied with like what had happened and where we went in the story. I think overall, I'd probably give this like an 8.5 too. I think it's a pretty good show.
Good.
Yeah,
Not magnificent as Drew
not,
it, but
not magnificent. I definitely would have rather like watched this show in like batches at a time. Yeah. Watching it week to week was pretty bad because it's like, God, like just want to know what happens. Like, I don't think I could binge the entire thing, but like I would definitely want to watch a few episodes at a time. And those weeks that I think I did like watch two, I was like, oh man, like that was so satisfying.
like this week.
Yeah, like this week. It's like, yeah, if we had just
that would have
stopped
been
at 24.
horrible to stop at 24. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good call, guys.
I think for me the key word that you said too, Mark, was like this was like a satisfying show. It's very satisfying. I don't think it's perfect. I think there's definite flaws, but overall it's just like a very good show to watch. It's insightful. It makes you think a little bit, and just overall like very entertaining. So I think on that note, I think I'll give it an 8. It has a lot of flaws, like we said, like the animation quality, pacing, at least at the beginning, because it's just like you crave more. It's like you just give me more. And so I think if we were watching this like as it aired, it would be like a brutal watch. Like especially this last week, like episode 24. If you had to stop on that and wait a week, that'd be miserable.
Yeah,
I still know a worse pain. The last episode of Madoka being delayed 3 weeks.
That's true. I did watch Madoka in like fucking one setting, and that is the way to watch that show. By the way, if you have not seen Madoka, just watch all 11 episodes, and it is super satisfying.
The last episode being delayed 3 weeks is worse than
that's
being delayed 1
that.
week.
I will agree with you. That is brutal. This one though, it's it's a tough week to week watch, but I'm glad we did it, and it was provoked a lot of conversation, and just want to put it on the record that I was right and all of you were wrong. I think that's very important to say.
I still think my monster rat, birthing theory was probably the best theory that I wish had come true. That would have made this show a 10 out of 10. Just gonna say.
Mark's just imagining a lobotomized Maria just being just like
popping out babies, just bam, bam, bam. They all have powers. They're all gonna destroy humanity. That would have been insane.
Beautiful story, Mark. Write that.
You know what? Forget you guys. I'm gonna go write it right now.
Yeah, no, but
and thus Mark jumped into the whole Dojin world and became
I'm gonna start writing OVAs. Excuse me.
Very cool. So look forward, everybody out there. Look forward to Mark's new Dojinshi on
don't look forward
alternate
to it. You'll probably get
world
arrested
of
in every country that.
It's gonna be great.
All right. So that's our Orishiri. That was 24 to 25 weeks of awesome. And like we said before, that's kind of going to be our new format going forward a little bit. And we will have an announcement probably later this week on what we're going to do for the Orishiri next week. So look out on our Discord, Twitter, all those places, and we'll be making an announcement in the coming couple of days. Let's jump into some news. So according to ANN, the New York Comic-Con Metaverse was held over the weekend and hosted a special panel for the Revolutionary Girl Utena series. We talked about it before. That is an Ikuhara directed show. So Ikuhara and Chiho Saito. Ikuhara announced that he is also currently working on his next work, so I think we're all looking forward to that. And it will be different from Utena and his previous work, so I'm kind of excited to see what he's branching out to do here.
No magical girl at all.
Mark, if you want to throw that link into the chat, we have the full interview with Ikuhara in New York Comic Con, and it's also in our Discord too if you want to take a watch. Interesting stuff there for sure. Next bit of news, Cloverworks has announced their next project titled Wonder Egg Priority, which will premiere January 2021. No official synopsis yet, but we will post a link and preview to the website. So if you're in Twitch chat, Mark's got you there with the link. Funimation and Aniplex of America announced over the weekend the upcoming Demon Slayer Mugen Train film that we've been hyping for a long time will be shown in theaters in America in early 2021. So hopefully with the pandemic, hopefully winding down.
And if movie theaters exist in 2021.
Right. That's also a big thing. We will be able to see it over here. The film is set to open in Japan this coming weekend on October 16th. So it's premiering. Yeah.
I wish I was in Japan because they get a 35 millimeter like a frame from the movie.
Oh,
for, like
cool.
the first million moviegoers.
They do that a lot for some stuff. That's like a common giveaway.
That's so cool. I want one.
I don't like how this next.
Probably good.
I don't like how this next bit of news is titled, but I will read it. Thank you, Mark, for considering me here. So some isekai news, my favorite. Reveroot Studios announces an adaptation of the manga and light novel I've Been Killing Slimes for 300 Years and Max Out My Level. I actually saw the key art for this, and it looks kind of cute. I will not watch it though.
No, you should watch it. It's a comfy show. It's a comfy show that is it's very satisfying. It's super chill.
It's a hard sell for me. It's a hard sell for me, Mark. The author Kisetsu Morita and illustrator Benio shared a short preview of the anime and 2 key visual arts, which was what I was talking about, and said it would premiere in spring 2021. Moshiko Tensei Jobless Reincarnation has also been announced for a January 2021 premiere, so a bunch of isekai shows are coming out, I guess. The 2021 is the year of the isekai, but also 2020 and also 2019 and also 2018. I digress. Additional cast and studio also released a short preview for both the anime and the mobile phone game. And Studio Bind is animating the series with Manabu Okamoto, who also directed Gamers. So we're a big fan of Gamers on this show, and looks like he'll be working on Jobless Reincarnation.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. I liked it. I think we're also getting Slime Guy and Shield Hero next year.
They got delayed. They were supposed to air this year.
Right. Yeah, so
the Slime Guy first part or the spin-off was supposed to be this season, and then the actual second season was supposed to be in winter.
Yeah, I think they're both
no luck.
Back. Yeah.
No, definitely. I really recommend the I've Been Killing Slimes for 300 Years. It's a comfy show.
I will say the key visual looks very comfy, very cute. So
it is cute.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap this show up with some happy hour. We are talking fall 2020 premieres for week 2. I've kind of highlighted a bunch of shows that all 3 of us have watched, and we can kind of discuss them briefly, but the full intent is in a couple weeks actually kind of deep dive into a lot of these and see how they're doing after the first few weeks. So the first one that we're all watching together is Higurashi no Nakukoro ni, the remake, I believe. This show's been interesting because I'm not familiar with the original. I just know that we talked about kind of the horror theme behind it, and it does, I think Mark brought it up, it reminds us of not School Live, what's that stupid show?
I always forget the name. It's School something.
You are talking about School Live.
School Live, right?
Is it School Live? Oh, maybe. I don't know. My brain. But yeah, the show with the zombies, and it's looks like cute slice of life, but then it's brutal zombies. I'm waiting for the show to get brutal though. You kind of get hints of it through the first couple episodes, right? I mean, the show starts off with the main character hacking the cute girls that he's been hanging out with pretty brutally to death. And then, the thing that's been like standing out for me is like anytime like this past event of what happened in this village like a few years ago gets brought up, like the drastic cuts and like zooming in on the face, like nothing happened, and then like they move on. So I'm just waiting for it to like kind of explode and go crazy. But I'm enjoying the show for sure.
Yeah, it's super weird when they have that contrast, because they haven't gotten into it like really yet, and it's like it's just this lingering thought.
The tension is so heavy. It's like is it gonna happen now? Is it gonna happen now?
Yeah,
what's gonna keep stringing you?
I feel like I'm on edge like the entire episode. Like I'm just like waiting for something to just like snap, or somebody to snap, or I don't know. There's got to be some kind of underlying thing in the village, or with the kids, or what. So I'm just waiting for it. So I'm looking forward to this show though. I think it's pretty good.
The one gripe I have about it is the animation quality is very poor.
Animation quality in the second episode was shit.
It was so bad. Like so bad. Both episodes was awful. But Rolando, I see you gritting over there. I know you don't want to spoil it for us, but I think you know what's gonna happen, and you're just like biding your time.
Right.
You're just like,
so here's the thing. So I did compare the first episode because I was like, man, this feels really faithful. And the first episode of this remake is very faithful to the first episode of the original, minus one thing, and that's when they're doing club activities in the first episode. I'm like, I don't remember this. I watched the first episode of the first series again, and I was like, oh, this is different, but they referenced this in this new remake. So I was like, I wonder what this means about stuff, or like what the series is going to be. And they did hint. So like the creator of the whole franchise kind of hinted that it was going to be, it's like a remake, like a reboot, but there's going to be new stuff for fans of the original. And we even see it. So in the second episode, they say like next time it's like chapter 3 of Oni Damashiken, and which is like the Oni like tricking chapter. Whereas this chapter, or like this actual arc in the original, is Oni Kakushihan, which is like the hide and seek arc, and you can see like just even with the similarities with like the name of the arcs, it's based on the original arc, but it's different. So now this kind of clarifies for me, at least, this is still something different that's based on the original arc. So, because there's stuff that happened in the second episode where I was like, wait, this didn't happen the way this way. They're showing you a lot of things that I was like, shit, like you don't even learn about this shit for like episodes into the original series. So it's fun because like you guys are experiencing this for the first time, but for me, like I know stuff that happens, and also,
are you sure it's actually going to happen?
Yeah, like also getting like new stuff is exciting for me. So
yeah,
as a big fan of this series,
this one's excited. A good one. I think we'll have a lot to talk about in a couple weeks for this one. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. Sorry, I was watching this with my girlfriend, and I was like telling her, I was like, so this is like a remake. She's like, why did they remake it? I was like, that's an excellent question. I don't know. I was like, all I know is they wanted to update it and change some things, so I don't know if it's actually just a complete remake or if it's actually like changing week to week. I was like, I haven't gotten down to the science of that yet, so I don't know.
Despite the animation being shit.
Yeah.
But the original didn't have good animation in the first place.
Yeah.
So.
It's so good. I'm not letting that deter me. Like sometimes that's like a big kill for me, but it's like the tension that they've been able to create so far is just like, it's like sucks you in. You just like want to watch more. So the next one that we've all seen, and I was surprised you guys watched this one, but Kuma Bear. Surprise, like an isekai, right? So I'm actually like watching it, but the only reason I'm watching is because it was one of the ones that was like assigned to me, like when we were talking about the season. I'm like, sounds interesting. I'll give it a try. It's kind of wild. I don't think I'm gonna watch. I don't even know if I'm gonna watch another episode. It's just kind of stupid, and it's an isekai, and
it's so dumb.
It's just a slice of life of a girl playing an MMO.
Yeah,
it's this is Bofuri like part 2. or like, but like in another world.
Except that's getting another season.
It is. It's so ridiculous. You know, I was thinking like when I was watching the show, I was like, this is as if your MMO character had on like some like paid costume that is just like completely
super overpowered.
Fit. It's overpowered for one, but it doesn't
joke.
fit. Yeah, it like doesn't fit like the entire world. It's it's like a meme, and then people are commenting on it in the show, and they're like, "What are you wearing?" And just like,
then that's why they got her.
Yeah,
you're in a fucking bear costume, you idiot.
Just a bear. The show is so stupid, but I liked it. I actually thought it was funny. I almost wasn't gonna watch it though. I'll be honest with you. I thought it looked too stupid to watch, that I wasn't gonna care for it, but it was pretty enjoyable.
I think for me, I'm done with it, but
of course you're done with it.
Yeah,
you know. Gave it a try more than I've done in the past. So
yeah.
The next one that we're all watching, Danmachi season 3. We got the Wiener arc. Can't believe they named that fucking character Wiener. But they did.
Yeah, I think you're adding a letter there, but
no, it's Wiener. It's for sure Wiener.
Not quite, but okay.
This show's so stupid, but I can't stop but watch it. I mean, it's so predictable. You know, each episode I think is just going to be more of the same thing. You know, we got a new familia that's bad, and we're gonna go fight that familia that's bad, and we're gonna
we got Wiener and Dix.
Team up with the. I did write that down in my notes.
Wiener versus Dix.
It's just more of the same, but I can't not watch it. So here we are.
I'm waiting for the next god to get yeeted off of the.
That's what we can all hope
sent back
for,
to
right?
heaven, right?
That's all I'm waiting for. It's a god to get yeeted off a tower. Yeah, this show. It's, like you said, it's like I don't know why I'm still watching the show, but I still enjoy it. Watching it, it's just you know what's gonna happen. You just know everything that's already happened before.
Yeah, especially because the OP is spoiling stuff that's gonna happen as well.
So Belle's gonna team up with the monsters, and they're gonna fight Dix.
And Eyes fall in shine.
Monster World, dude.
Yeah,
he gets to fight Eyes.
God.
Monster Musume.
I have a feeling that has something to do with it, because if we...
Oh, for sure.
I have a feeling that when this arc was written in the actual light novels, it was when Monster Girls were like a big thing.
Had to have been. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Iowa Kakaru Sport Climbing Girls. I don't know how I feel about this show, because it's like the first episode I was like kind of pissed at it because of how much of a dick the June character was. She's like, no fun, don't touch our wall, don't climb. And also like how unrealistic the show is. Like, you are going to be a god at climbing the wall because you're good at puzzles and dragons. Like, that's stupid. I know you guys have been like rock climbing and bouldering, and like if you took like a super like neat person who has never like lifted a weight in their life, and then just being automatically a god, or I guess in the second episode kind of tempered my expectations, right? Because she actually like did fail. But it's just like really unrealistic for me to expect that like just because she's good at problem solving that she would be really good at rock climbing, because that is a valuable skill in it, but you also have to be like in shape, which I have a hard time believing that a neat girl who's winning gaming competitions would be that. So that's like the gripe that I have with the show. But overall, I think the second episode was better. June is like actually a likable character now for what she did, and overall, it's enjoyable for, you know, a pretty kind of different sports anime.
I think you're looking a little bit too. You're taking it a little bit too face value in terms of that, because I've always looked at this thing like watching the teaser for it as like this is gonna be something more along the lines of Keijo,
Right.
Like it's gonna be ridiculous. Right. So like
I need to start treating it like that. Yeah.
The first episode didn't bother me because I looked at it in that viewpoint, because like it didn't seem like it was supposed to be serious, because like if you were like a serious beginner at rock climbing, there's no way you would have been able, like, you would be able to do that. And last week we did kind of talk about, like, Alec was bringing up the point that there's no way she would have figured out how to do, like, the move they talked about where, like, you switch your foot position. And Mark and I were making the argument, and it's like, well, I mean, like, coming from experience, like, being beginners, like, there are some things that you do pick up, and, like, that was one of the more easier moves to pick up on, because it's like, if you're in an uncomfortable position when you start a route while you're, like, you just, like, for example, bouldering, like, you can switch your position if you've got, like, your arms set, like, you can switch your position with your legs, like, your lower body still has, like, it's just something that your body, like, your body will always figure out, will figure out the most comfortable thing for it to do, and that's kind of like a big thing with, like, climbing, and something, I forgot what her name is, the main character, she learns in this second episode, where she learns, like, the Egyptian, and uses it to kind of rest on the next hold. And that's just something that, like, because your body is reacting to the situation, you learn how to do on your own. So, like, I don't think, like, a lot of these things are unreasonable to think that it's, like, just because you're a beginner, you wouldn't know how to do this. Not everything, like, if you're a beginner, is something that you're told to do. There are things that, like, people figure out on their own. Otherwise, you wouldn't, like, these things wouldn't have been discovered in the first place. But I do think this show has to be looked at with that sort of rose-tinted glasses. Like, this isn't something to be taken seriously.
Yeah, I think I started to think like that too when they started introducing, like, the gods of, you know, women's fighting and, like, all their nicknames and stuff, because that's, like, exactly what they did in Keijo.
Yeah.
And so, like,
Yeah,
so
right.
For sure, if you start thinking about it that way. For sure,
I'm starting to feel like this is sort of like a Keijo Harukana Receive mixed with, like, Run with the Wind. It's like you're getting these sort of fanatical ideas into, like, a sports team / solo experience of, like, a sports anime. And like, yeah, like the fanaticism of the show is, like, I think that's the thing that I'm also, like, having trouble, like, forgetting, because it's like the first episode was, like, super over the top, and then the second episode kind of brings it back down to earth a little bit more. And, like, I feel like I think going forward now, I sort of need to think about this as, like, this is just going to be, you know,
you can't think too hard about this show.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's the thing. But, like, it's still enjoyable. Like, I'm glad that June was a better character in the second episode. Because she was pretty unbearable in the first.
Yeah.
Good one, entertaining. We'll for sure talk about that one a little bit more. Next one we got on here, Kami-sama ni Natahai. I think this one's, like, a pleasant surprise for me, and Rolando, you had kind of mentioned something similar. I think all of our questions, though, going forward is, especially for, like, what is it? It's like PA Works, Key, sort of, like, combo here. Can they finish? Can they, you know, bring it home? I think the overall plot, at least for me, doesn't have too much substance. It's like the world's ending in 30 days, and that's kind of it. But I felt the back and forth between the characters was really enjoyable. And so far I'm really digging it. The animation quality is very good.
Yeah. I mean, PA Works and Key. What have we seen from them before? We've had, Angel Beats and Charlotte. And so we have a 50-50 chance on whether this show lives up to the hype and continues on to it, or whether it falls flat in the final episodes.
I think this is one we're going to follow pretty closely for that too. It's on a 3-episode rule, but I know that I'll probably watch it through because I need to see where it flops when it inevitably does so, if the track work for PA Works recently is any indication.
Yeah, I have a feeling that's probably what's gonna happen. Because I like the show too. Like I like the characters and I like the back and forth. The comedy was funny. It had like some really good moments in it. The confession thing at the very end was like I actually was like laughing out loud. Like that was just
How bad
so
do you
brutal.
feel that, dude?
It's so brutal. Like
How
the sound
bad do you
effect of him dropping to his knees. It was like boo. I was like, oh man.
Well, it's like if you look at it, was he really paying attention to this girl? If she's his childhood friend, he didn't know
Yeah.
like
He
shit
didn't know
about
anything
her,
about it.
her interests
Yeah.
and all that stuff. Like,
Yeah. It was good. Like
putting her on a
I
pedestal.
yeah, I enjoyed the show, and then like I like the characters. I think I'm like kind of curious. Like I kind of really don't know how the world's ending in 30 days is gonna go. I'm getting like Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer vibes, which is like one of my favorite manga. It's really good, and it's like sort of similar premise. I don't know. I'm not sure how this god is supposed to play into the kid. Like if he has if he's supposed to be the one to save the world or what. I don't know. I'm curious in that aspect of it.
One of the promotional artwork is if you had the power of a god, would you save the world or what? So that is a thing that you should think about.
Yeah.
Last show that I want to talk about, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about because I love this show. Mark, I know that you're not watching it. It's okay for you not to be watching it, but Rabbit Cafe season 3, what a comfy show, am I right, Rolando?
Yeah, I lost that bet where you said you can't not smile while watching the show.
Damn.
There's just so much. There's just so much to love about Gochiusa. It's so good.
And you take the main premise, at least for the first episode, of girls shopping for new uniforms and girls going to a flea market, and then you spin it and you just like make it as cute as they do. It's just like
You got diabetes.
you get
You got diabetes.
it's too comfy, it's too sweet, it's amazing. So Mark, if you're ever in the market for a comfy show, I would say go back and watch seasons 1 and 2 and
Highly
jump
recommend.
into
Do I
season
need to
3.
watch the first 2 seasons to watch the third?
Probably not.
Probably, well,
But like it
you won't have
it's-
any of the character
yeah, you won't-
background,
yeah.
and that's part of the cuteness at this point.
Okay, I see.
At least like, so for like this episode too, it's like all the niches of the different girls, and so it's like Rize is like kind of this like
Tomboy.
badass tomboy sort of deal, and they play off of that, and then like Coco is just like a fucking annoying Genki character, and
Well, she's just an airhead.
Yeah. Chino's like this quiet, reserved, like trying to come out of her shell, and you have like Sharo, who's like a cheapskate, and who's Amausa?
Chio.
Yeah, Chio. She's just like this like very proper like Ojo-sama like kind of character, and so like knowing that and like how they like feed off of each other and their interactions is like, I think it's very important. You could watch it, you wouldn't lose anything by just jumping in season 3, but you pick up on these subtleties,
Yeah.
and like why it's funny, because it's like this character always acts like this, so that's funny.
And you wouldn't understand Aoyama Blue Mountain if you
She's
didn't
the
watch
best
first-
character.
the first 2 seasons.
She is the best character.
Also known as Blue Mountain,
watching
Mountain if you translated it.
Did she show up at the very beginning of the
Yeah.
Okay. I was like gonna watch it, and I was like, I don't know any of these characters, like, and then she just shows up, and I was like,
And
I
the
feel like I
best
missed
part
something here.
is that because their cafes, like their names are based off of like different drinks.
Mhm.
So it's like
Yeah.
Chino is cappuccino, and Cocoa is what was there?
Hot cocoa.
Yeah, hot cocoa.
Her
is
sister is like
yeah.
mocha.
Yeah. And then Rize is Te des Rize, which is like Te des Alizé in like French. So like there's just like all these like name puns with like drinks, and it's just a
And there's
feel,
rabbits.
It's a feel good show. There's rabbits. You just accept the fact that Chino's grandfather is a rabbit.
Oh,
You just don't
It's
question
like-
it.
You just like
Okay.
turned into a rabbit.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
They run a bar. They run a bar out of the
Yeah.
cafe at night. you know?
Yeah, I like the character tropes you just said. So like maybe. All right.
It's
I'll put it on my
comfy.
list.
Come next week.
perfect
Mark's
storm.
watched all of
I'd
it.
be like, God damn it, I hate you guys.
That's how I watched the first season, because like I had like this pretty much exact conversation with somebody, and they're like just watch it. It's like so comfy, like you're gonna enjoy it. I'm like, I don't know. It's like, you know, cute girls doing cute stuff. It's like not my thing. And then I watched the whole first season in a day. So.
And then after that, Mark watches all of Kinnear Mosaic, and then
That's another one. That's another one. Just as good.
All right, I'll give it a shot this week, and then I'll tell you how much like sleep I lost watching it.
Yeah. It's comfy. It's a good one. So there's also several other shows that folks are watching, may or may not get brought up in our kind of like monthly recap show that we'll be doing in a couple weeks. So stay tuned for that. Some closing it now. Oh, go.
Sorry, I do want to address Noblesse. So I started watching. I read the webtoon just like really quick. You have to watch the OVAs that are out for the show in order to get and understand what's happening in the season.
Wait,
in
really?
like, the Crunchyroll. Yeah, like absolutely you have to. Because I started watching what is available on Crunchyroll, and I was like, I don't remember any of this, like what was happening. Yeah, and then all the comments are like, you need to watch the OVAs, like the 2 OVAs, in order to understand. So, don't think that was a great choice for them to do that.
Bummer.
Bummer. I don't think I'm gonna watch the rest of it. I don't think I'm gonna go back and watch it because I already know what's gonna happen. It's a pretty generic show. Like it's cool. It seems interesting to you. Just a forewarning. You gotta watch the OVAs.
My recommendations for this season are definitely, if you're not watching IQ, you should catch up, because this match is so good.
I'm in that bucket.
It's so good. I was smiling the whole second episode. It's got the Haikyuu charm, the comedy, and the hype. This is just sports anime at its best. And then my other 2 shows to recommend are watch Love Live Nijigasaki and Majou no Tabi Tabi.
Yeah.
My top picks so far from the season.
Yeah, I still have Majou no Tabi Tabi on my list. I will for sure catch up on that one.
It's good. I think that's probably my favorite of the season right now. The second episode is really good too.
Oh my god, this show is so good.
It was really good. It's super heartfelt. I really like the main character. I really like the whole world. The music, the soundtrack is great. Yeah, I'm really liking that show. So,
and I will. I know Rolando, you had a hard time finding it, but I think Mark would agree with me. I will shout out Akudama Drive as well. I think that's going to be a really good show.
Yeah, well, that's our 3-episode rule, right? So.
Yeah, so we will for sure be talking about it. But it started off really strong. Really good character design. We talk about it, before the Danganronpa, same character designs there. And I think the story will be interesting enough. It's going to be a heist, Mark. Mark loves heists. We're gonna do a heist. Yeah. So I think it's gonna be a good one.
Yeah.
Moving into some closing announcements. So we talked about it a little bit, but next week we're going to be doing our next round of Orishiri, but it's going to be a little bit different. We've decided to do a movie. So we have nominated a couple different movies here. We have Howl's Moving Castle, a Ghibli classic, Garden of Words, and Ride Your Wave. So we will be voting between these of what we want to watch, and we will be discussing those next week. So stay on the lookout for our Twitter or Discord or any of the other ways that we'll mention in a second to make sure you're up to date on what we end up going with. We are also watching Clannad on Thursdays. So we will be doing Clannad at 8 p.m. Pacific time. Can't remember what episodes we're on, but we're getting
17 and 18.
Getting pretty close to the end of After Story of Clannad. So we just had the big reveal of Sadness last week. So we're starting to wrap it up.
And this is where the series gets good.
Yeah, I was just gonna say this is where we think it's good. So if you want to jump into some Clannad after story, join the Discord, animeondraft.com/discord. Get the link, jump in, and like I said, 8 p.m. PST on Thursdays. And who knows, maybe we'll do some Utsuna next, maybe some Gundam. We'll figure that out. In terms of our information, check out the website, animeondraft.com. It has all of the information you could ever ask for in terms of links to socials. You can listen to the podcast, has all that information there. I already mentioned it, but join the Discord, animeondraft.com/discord. You can get the link there and jump in. There's memes, there's good times, there's beers. So join the Discord. Yeah. Exactly. Twitter at @AnimeOnDraft. Keep you up to date for some of the different things that we're doing on the show, like when we go live, what we decide to watch, those kinds of things. So at @AnimeOnDraft on Twitter. Instagram, @AnimeOnDraft Podcast, pictures of the beers, information like that. So check that out. If you are not listening live on Twitch, we are where podcast services can be found. Just search for Anime on Draft, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, all those good stuff. Check those out. Again, just search for Anime on Draft. I mentioned Twitch. Follow us on twitch.tv/animeondraft and turn on notifications for when we go live. Currently, we stream on Mondays starting around 6:30 to 7 Pacific time. And like I said, if you drop that follow and turn on notifications, you will always know when we're getting around to starting the podcast, but generally on Mondays for the most part. If you have any topics you'd like to discuss, tips, tricks, anything like that, feel free to email us at contact@animeondraft.com or use our contact page on the website. And anytime you listen to us on a platform where you're able to give a review, if you wouldn't mind dropping us a review, maybe a 5-star written review for us, it helps with our visibility, also lets us know what we're doing right or maybe wrong as we kind of do our show. So I think that's it. Can we get one more like Fabulous Max?
I already had my finger on the button. Just waiting to do it.
I think we need that.
I was fucking waiting.
I think as you play us out, I think you should play us out to some Imagine Rockin' Over Japan, and I think that's how we should wrap up our show. So, that's right. So yeah, thanks for joining us.